gets torn in half. Memories in bits and pieces, traces of...
Welcome to the West End Video Newsletter. My name is Joe LaPiccolo, your host for today's newsletter. We have a real interesting show coming up on memories of the old West End. Our guests today are Tony Oddo, former West Ender and author of an upcoming book about the West End, and Raymond Papa, publisher of the West End newsletter for the past 4 years, who'll be leaving us soon. And he's done a real great job and brought happiness to a lot of former West Enders. We'd like to start off with Tony. Tony, can you tell us a little the name of your book and a little bit about it, please?
Well, the name of the book actually is entitled "If You Lived Here, You'd Be Home Now," and as anyone from the West End knows, that's the sign that's on Charles Street. And I was kind of concerned about that title because I didn't know if we had the right to use that, but as Ray said, that he saw that in other places and even out of state, so it really isn't registered to any one particular area or person. And the book has to be fiction because we have to say a lot of things that we want to get away with without having to go to court. But it's fiction as much as you like it to be, and if you know what was going on, you know what the actual parts are, that we kind of had a layer of truth woven in the fabric of the story. It's interesting because we were so many different kinds of people in the West End. At one time, we had as many as 27 different ethnic groups living in the West End. And the sad part of the whole thing is that these people in the book and in actuality were never allowed to come back. I mean, they told us that we would be helped to find adequate housing, but that phrase only meant that they would let us go to a project, and we didn't want to go to a project. We came from homes. Why should we go to a project? And you know what happened when they built the high-rise. They built it as luxury apartments, and none of the people in the West End could afford it.
Tony, for those who don't know, tell us what happened to the West End 30 years ago, 1959. For those of you who don't know, the West End was wiped out. The whole neighborhood was gone. Tell us about that.
Well, it really was nothing more than a land grab, and the West End today stands as a monument to poor redevelopment, because urban renewal as such was never intended to be the urban removal that the West End became. They took the land by eminent domain. They gave the people peanuts for the land. Your father had a business there.
Right.
How much money did you get for the bar and everything?
They promised them 900, never got a dime. Not a dime. Promised 900, never seen a penny of anything.
When I think about the house we lived in, there are very few single-family homes in the West End. We had one of them, and it was a brick building with a slate roof, and we had 7 rooms, and 5 of the rooms had fireplaces in them. Yes. And my father got the magnificent sum of like $4,400.
Wow.
Even in those
Big
days.
bread,
And that
big
was,
bread.
yeah.
What a shame.
And all I have to say is, would you like to have that today? But that thing was repeated over and over again so many times. And there's a guy in my book that I model after a guy who was the local tailor, Siegel the tailor. And when the West End was coming down, he was in his shop. And remember how the bay windows used to have the copper on the outside? And they were stripping the copper off, and the stuff was falling down. Here's this poor old man, he's pressing the clothes in the shop, because this was his only way of life. This was more than just making a living. This is what his existence was all about. He was about 78 years old. He couldn't go somewhere else and start all over again. And in the book, we happen to bring up the point where there's a riot going on outside as the people are starting to tear down the buildings, and someone throws a Molotov cocktail, and the cops come and everything. And the old man finally gives up his pressing, and he comes out on the sidewalk because he is spoken to by the Benny Mountain, who is the hero of the story. He said, look, what do you think is going to happen ultimately? People are going to get hurt, and we're going to have to get out anyway, because if you look around you, look at how many boarded up buildings there are. Look at how many people are already gone. They're not going to say, okay, we changed our mind. He comes out and he just gives up his business. And it's kind of like, at that point, a turning point in the book where violence isn't going to do it. And sitting on the doorstep isn't going to do it. The people have understood now that the buildings are coming down, they have to move somewhere else, and the only other alternative they have is to try to fight it through legislation and through politics and stuff. And you know, the truth of the matter is we're here 30 years later, and no one gets back in. This is kind of the way the book ends.
Well, we're hoping that'll change. There's one parcel of land left down in the Knott Station area that we are fighting to get back for affordable housing for former West Enders. It's in court right now, tied up by Rappaport and his gang. And
Is that the Lowell
BRA.
Square?
Yeah, Lowell Square parcel. And we still have hope that people will come back to the West End. I think the case is scheduled to be coming up in January. So
The unfortunate part about that is I think they probably have about 460 housing units there, and there are about 7,000 people displaced in the West End. And there are more than 460 people that want to come back.
Well, I'll tell you.
How many people do we get at the West End reunion?
Well, I'll tell you what. We had sent out a flyer, a form to fill out a few years back for people. At the time, we were hoping that the Lowell Square, and along with where Langone is, the land was supposed to be bought up, and West End Preference was supposed to have it there. And we had sent out to all our readers, naturally, which we have about 2,700. And we received some like 400, maybe 600 back that actually would like to come back to the West End. So if they were to put up something, I think the people that fill out the forms, that want to come back, would have a good shot at getting back.
But the thing that happens is when there is any amount of public housing available, all the politicians, whether it's Mayor Flynn and Governor, what's his name there, they all have to get into the act and say, well, you know, we have a lot of other homeless people here, and there are the nurses at the Mass General Hospital who can't afford the housing. And before you know it, they have represented every single voting group in the state as much as telling them that they're going to have a shot at these 460 units. I may be wrong, maybe 470, whatever, but the point is there aren't enough to go around, and they act like it's the biblical loaves and fishes. They're going to go on forever. I say whatever there is, whatever amount of affordable housing there is, should go to the people of the West End because they were robbed of it, out and out robbed of it over 30 years ago.
that's right. They stole our homes and they stole our churches, and we can't go back to our schools or our churches or our streets. There is nothing left. And it's really, and the sad part about it is the West End was a truly urban village made up of immigrants from the European countries, and they came here with the hopes of finding a better life, and all this was shattered with this under the guise of urban renewal. Tell us about your boyhood days growing up in the West End. What do you miss about the West End? What was unique about it?
One thing I don't miss about is growing up with him. We had, what is that beeping?
That's okay.
Oh, sure.
You got a bomb over there. Be careful, this kid.
I'm getting nervous now. No. The thing that I loved about it was the fact that we were so many different kinds of people, and we had so many different traditions that died along with the West End. We used to have the Jewish holidays, the Sabbath, the Shabbos, come in the evening when the Jewish people couldn't put on the lights or turn on the gas.
The candles.
And we go door to door with the Shabbos choir, and we turn on the lights and we get a penny or an apple or something like that. Kids don't realize what that was like today. That just, we got a big kick out of that. It wasn't just the penny. It was that is, aha, I went to Schwartz's, he gave me 2 pennies. You only got a penny from so-and-so. But it was the flavor that was there. And the big thing that, unfortunately, they can't realize today is we grew up in a drug-free society. We didn't have those kind of problems. We were truly people who were privileged to be poor and yet be proud and happy because we had things, we possessed things. We didn't worry that someone's going to steal something because someone needed a fix. Or we just had a great relationship with each other, and because of that, there isn't anyone in the West End, growing up in the West End, who didn't adopt an appetite for pizza or bagels and cream cheese or Albanian spinach pie. You got a chance to be truly cosmopolitan. And the thing that's so funny is the things that we ate in those days as poor kids that today are really you know, this is a gourmet meal.
Yeah,
now.
supposedly,
You go to
right.
some of the restaurants. See, you miss the different kinds of food and the different customs that you're introduced to. And even, I think all of us picked up a little bit of language, some of it the wrong kind. You could say a few words in many, many different languages.
Speaking about food, Raymond, your dad had a famous bar on
Yeah,
11th
oh,
Street.
sure, yeah.
Tell us about the meatball sandwich, and tell us a little bit about
I
the
can tell you,
bar.
the meatball sandwich, I'll never forget it. We had, I never forget the first time he made it. We had 35 meatball sandwiches. And as your brother Phil put it, 22 people were rushed to the Mass General Hospital and just pumped out for main poison. Naturally, as a joke.
There were no more dogs hanging
No,
around.
no more
backyard.
dogs in the neighborhood. Got rid of the dogs and the cats. No, he had a restaurant. It was a regular bar. And
Fun place.
He made, it was a lot of, like I said, the bar was, we have pictures of, the bar was kind of warped. Well, everybody that went in there was a little warped too. But he did make meatball sandwiches. At that time, for a quarter, they were pretty big. And he had a pretty good business there.
A regular neighborhood type
Yeah,
of tavern.
like every tavern that was down there was a neighborhood tavern.
What do you miss about the West End yourself?
All the
growing-
people.
Yeah.
The people.
Uh-huh.
The people were friendly. There was no animosity towards each other. There was nobody disliked this guy for what he was. Nobody disliked this one, so on and so forth. It was great. If there was a problem with one family, everybody helped out to try to help this family any way they could, whether it be monetary or food or any way you want to look at it. But I really miss the people. And though I do see them today, but they're spread out so far. But growing up, especially with my friends where I hung on Eaton Street, it was great.
You're talking about charity among people and how they help each other. Tell us the story about the Rosie Burger and.
Oh, I can tell you that's a classic story. My mother had just passed away, and she had walked into the bar to see my father. And actually, there were 6 of us at home. We were kind of small, and she went up to my father.
Rosie
Rosie
Burger?
Burger herself, and Rosie, remember, was they used to look at her and say, "Hey, Rosie, she rub your eyes out of your head," which people had a different definition of her. But she had walked in the bar, and I'll never forget this day. She walked in the bar, and she signed a check, and she said, "My father, you put any figure you want on that," and walked out, which I thought was great. You know, she did that knowingly with the kids. And that's the kind of people they were
Sure,
down there, because
yeah.
other people approached my father, anything you need. But she was an exception. She was in my eyes. As, you know, your brother Phil will attest to that as well as a lot of the people will. She was good. She was a really good-hearted woman, if you understood her. But what she did for my father was a day I'll never forget. And as you know, she's still alive today, living
Yeah.
in Roslindale, I believe,
Yeah.
in a nursing home there.
That was prevalent throughout the West End. People used to help each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, no
If-
question about
If
it.
my
yeah.
mother or your mother or your grandmother were in the hospital sick and there was nobody to take care of the children, your neighbor would automatically
well,
pitch
like
in
I
and
say-
feed you and clothe you and take you to school.
Like I say, my mother died when I was young, and a lot of people come to the house who did cooking and who did the washing, who made sure the kids were in time, and there was a lot involved there.
We used to
And my
keep our
father
doors
did a
open.
lot too for us, you know, naturally. He was our mother and father then.
No locks on the doors on those days.
We never didn't
Yeah.
need
Open
them.
house,
True.
Didn't need
everybody.
'em. No,
Yeah.
you didn't need them.
Speaking
What was there to
about-
steal?
Right,
We all had the same.
Today
we were all poor.
right. Today we hear about crime and street gangs and drugs. Was the West End crime-free? Were there any gangs or violence that you recall?
Well, we had a lot of fights. I can't say that we were.
No, there were fights on
you
each corners, but not to the point where they hurt each other. In them days, you fought, you went down, you got beat. That was it. Today, you go down, they want to shoot you, stab you. No, it goes
Right.
beyond that. But that's the violence of today. The kids are like that because they're dealing with drugs, they're dealing with money. People don't realize how much
Motivation
money
here was
actually.
supremacy. You know, who's
Yeah,
tougher than the
yeah,
other
that's
guy.
all
and
it
stuff
was,
like
right,
that. It was
right.
competitiveness. It wasn't really anything for an ultimate gain to steal someone's money or do anything like that.
Instead of, well, today we call them neighborhoods, but in the West End we call them corners. On every corner there was usually a variety store or some sort of business, and the kids at night used to gather at these corners, and we had basketball teams. Tell us, what corner did you hang
Of
on?
course, we had Auburn and Chambers because it was right near where I lived. And
The meanest guys in the world. Ooh, they were
it's
mean.
not true. And where this camera stops. No, and when they play cards there. And then Poplar Street and Brighton Street, we used to hang around there. We'd go from one to the other. And just good groups of guys hanging around, guys and girls. I mean,
Well, you know, what you got to keep in mind, too, we utilized everything that we had to do. We had the PB House, the Western House,
Those are community centers.
yeah, all
Yeah.
the
It was a
center. We
big-
utilized every one of them. The ballparks. I mean, there wasn't a Sunday
Sure.
or Saturday you went by, even during the week after school, that people weren't using the ballpark.
not to make it sound like we hung around the corners all the time.
No, we were everywhere. We used every facility that was available, Even the playgrounds. We used to play punch bowl. There wasn't a day. We kept ourselves busy. Today, the kids, you know, I don't think the kids have the options we had then, that we had places to go to. They
This
don't
is
have it.
true. They hang around the malls and things like that.
Yeah.
But as far as learning how to sail at the
Right, at the boat clubs.
sailboat club,
Right.
and you know, any type of sports we had access to, whether it was the Peabody House or West End House, just we had things to do. We kept busy.
And one of the reasons why the West End was eaten up by the big developers was the location.
Oh, great location.
Oh, it was ideal, sure.
Great
Center. You
location.
can get in it. You can get it to any point and walking.
Right, the Charles River was in front of you. You walked to the Charles River. We had the community boathouse for sailing, fishing. We had a large, big ball field there. The community pool, swimming in the Charles prior to that.
And don't forget, you had Filene's Basement at that time in town itself.
Boston Common,
downtown.
Right.
downtown
Boston Common,
sure.
sure. Public Garden.
You could walk to Knott Station, right on the borderline, Knott Station, the North End for the flavor of Italian food,
Right.
and the market, and Beacon Hill. We were so, and downtown Boston, the State
Everything
House,
was there,
City
sure.
Hall.
Everything was there. That's why they
That's
took
why
the
they
land.
wanted it, sure.
Sure, they knew what
Yeah.
the value of it was.
Well, I always say they stole from the poor and gave to the rich, and that's exactly
Sure.
what happened in the West End.
Well, I don't know. I was off an apartment there when we had first moved out for $800 a month. And at the time, I don't think between my father, my sister, my 5 brothers, between us, we're making $100 a month.
What were you paying for rent when you left?
$65 a month. Steam heat, 7
That's the
rooms.
story, yeah.
Steam heat, 7 rooms.
And our schools, we had really great schools. What
We had
school
better
did you go
teachers.
to?
We had better
Tell us
teachers.
a little about your...
We went to the, of course, the Mayu School we started off at, and then the Blackstone School
Peter Faneuil.
and Peter Faneuil School. And teachers in those days didn't make the money that they made today, and they didn't have the things that were available to the kids today in schools as far as the equipment and the types of teaching aids that they have now. But they had teachers who wanted to teach. And they had something else, too. They had the cooperation of the parents, even if it was to the fact where the parents didn't want to hear about their kid getting hit by the teacher. Because if they heard about it, the kid got hit again. Today, it's not my kid, not my son. Don't touch my child. And if, in fact, they ruled with an iron hand, they did it with the motive of having the children grow and learn something. And we wouldn't dare give a teacher a hard time. Not that we did.
Everybody
once
did,
in a while
yeah.
we got caught.
Sure.
But and let our parents find out about it, because you'd get hell when you got home too. But the teachers themselves, and unfortunately most of them were very old when we got there. I don't know.
Well, Miss Deegan was there since they built the West End back in
Yeah.
1810. No,
Miss
really, you
Quinn.
go and Miss Patton was there, Miss Quinn was there.
And people don't
All
know
of
what little money these people get paid, these teachers. They get peanuts. But they wanted to be teachers. And they wanted the kids, they love to see the kids evolve. They love to see them become something. Unfortunately, there are too many teachers today that are just in there to make a salary, get out, they get a second job, they get something else to do for the summer. But we had more dedication.
Right.
You know, another thing too, years ago, the classrooms, there were 20, 30 kids in a classroom, maybe 35.
Sure.
Today, if there's over 27, oh, the teacher can't be there alone, they have to have assistants in there.
Yeah.
But also, like Tony said, I know I got out of line with Mr. Ashford. You remember Mr. Ashford? Gave me a hell of a beating. And the guy was right. I didn't go home and tell my father because I knew
You
what was
killed
at
the
the
guy.
other end of the stick.
Remember
And,
Miss McHugh? Miss McHugh, she's coming in. First day of school, Miss McHugh, and she's big like this here. Remember what they used to call her? And she'd come in, and everybody be sitting there watching her, and she'd just go over, and she'd pull out some blocks of math paper, and she'd stack them up like this here, and she'd go in the closet, and she'd pull that big rat tan, and she'd wipe it off like this here, and like Zorro. She'd go, fluff, like that, and the blocks would go, like this, she'd go, anybody want to get wise? No takers. And from then on, she had no problem. She taught English, and you learned English.
Well, matter of fact, they taught every subject.
some of us
well,
learned
some,
English.
yeah, some of us didn't get too good. But they taught a number of subjects, not just the teachers, just one subject. They taught them all.
Yeah.
And when you went to different classes, they went from music to history to, well, now they call it social studies. We had geography, history. Today it's social studies. It's all combined as one. And we had, mathematics. You know, every teacher was able to teach in every aspect of the teaching business that there was.
Not only was there respect for the teachers in those days, but the cop on the beat. Today,
Yeah.
today there's
Oh,
no
yeah.
respect for law. You
Well,
read
there was a
about-
lot of respect too growing up for parents and people that were older than us. We did respect. Today, it's a new
Yeah,
ball game
yeah.
today. It's naturally a lot to do with dope, junk, call it what you may, because the kids they lost their own self-respect. Let alone they don't got no respect for themselves. They're not going to respect anybody
Do you
else.
remember the cop on the beat? Do you remember who?
Sure,
Casey, you got it.
And Sully, they got the picture
Sully.
of Sully
Oh,
and
Sully
Phil
gave
and
me a
Johnny
slap one day.
with the handcuffs, yeah.
And your parents appreciated the cop pulling you by the ear up to your parents' house.
And you didn't want that either, Joe. If you got that, you got a beating again. I
Right.
mean, you didn't have much of. Matter of fact, if your friend's mother called up, your son was out of line over here, you got a slap for that too. You didn't have much of a choice. But the thing, the key word I think is respect. Everybody respected one another, and they respected each other's parents as well as your own.
And
But
property also.
Today the kids. I don't blame the children. I don't blame the parents. I don't know where the fault may lie, because I look at it this way: a kid goes to school, and if his child gets out of line, the teacher can't put the kid straight. Now the parent comes down, they want to sue the teacher, or they want to sue the school system. It's a different ballgame. So the kid learns no respect for the teacher, and then he looks at his mother and father, they're going to back me up everything I do wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Then they lose respect for them.
There's something else we had in the West End. I think that it's very unique, is the sense of humor that the people in the West End had. And the things that we used to do, when I say we didn't have much money, and we didn't, weren't motivated by drugs or anything like that, or the need to accumulate a lot of money. And we found our good times in very simple things, crazy things, but simple things. Two things come to mind, and we'll talk about the crop. One of the guys, I guess it was Dickie Garino, had a Model A Ford with a rumble seat. And we started with water balloons, fill up with water balloons. We go by Tony Brogdon's corner, we start throwing the water balloons. And then we come back again, and we've got this air raid warden pumping. We're pumping the thing and squirting everybody like this here. Next thing you know, we get over there, and there might have been 20 of them. They had a hose. It was going in the sewer. We couldn't see it. They lifted up the back of the Model A. We couldn't move. The wheels are spinning around. The hose. And people walking by got soaked and stuff like that. And that's where I remember Sully coming by, Sully the cop, saying, "Another episode like last night, there won't be anyone in this corner." Well, that was a big deal in those days. Today, I mean, violence and stuff like that, and they're still back in the corner. The thing that kills me today is when you see the policeman standing by the car with a radar gun in a 30-mile-an-hour zone to catch someone going 40 miles an hour and make a big deal out of it when they know damn right well where they're selling drugs right across the street from the school.
Right, you're right.
And the cops in those days were a part of the community. They were part of us. It was just, we all belonged together. When Sully the cop said something like that to us, he didn't mean that we weren't going to be in the corner. It was the way your big brother reprimanded you, or your uncle would say something to you. "Come on, guys, enough is enough. You went overboard last night." But on a milder note, I think at the time, standing around your father's place is Johnny Hoare and Yo-Yo and those things. You shaved your hair off.
Oh, that was when you Brenner won the Academy Award.
And they had the convertible, and Johnny Hoare got in the back there with no hair, and he
drove
had the,
through Washington
basketball trophy, yeah, like this.
Yeah.
My sister's girlfriend came over the house. She says, "I saw you, Brenner. I saw you, Brenner." Sure, you did.
Yeah.
Crazy fun things like that that were a part of the uniqueness of the sense of humor of the West End.
It was a great sense of humor. You know, I mean, your brother Phil had a great sense of humor.
Crazy.
Well, it wasn't that
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, who else would take you in the middle, 10 o'clock at night, drive you to Mount Auburn Cemetery, tie you up and leave you there? I mean, who else would do something like that? That was a good sense of humor. And that guy would come back. They took me one time, I beat him back. They couldn't figure out why. I hitchhiked, and I got back before them. I was down Phillips laughing at
Famous
it.
cemetery ride, yeah. And Phillips Drugstore. Everything started and ended at Phillips Drugstore. Charles Street Circle, yeah. People say, "Where'd you go up in the West?" And I say, "Charles Street Circle, Phillips Drugstore."
In the summertime, we had no country there. We had no trees, and we used to go to camp. Did you go to camp, the Peabody House camp?
Yeah, I went to the Peabody House camp. I went to the West End House camp one year, and for the rest of the years I went to the Peabody House camp because I became very friendly with Jim Baker, who was the director. He was our counselor when we were 11 years old. And later on, I became program director, and Phil was head of the kitchen workers.
Is that what they call the camp now?
Phil would always like this, right? He'd yell out from the porch, "Lasties!" Then when the last one came, he got a slap, you know? Come running. I wasn't last, there's someone behind me.
Oh, you didn't beat me, I get you later.
Yeah, we had great times there. I met someone at the West End reunion who came up to my brother Phil. He approached Phil and he said, "You know, you had a brother," and Phil said, "I still do, he's over here." And, he said, "Oh, my God." And he mentioned something that was very true that we realized when we were kids, is that the people who worked there were working there because they wanted you to have a good time.
Right.
And we were getting the magnificent sum of $50 a month.
Big money.
Just enough to buy
Big
cigarettes and stuff like that, sure. We did it because someone did it for us when we were kids, and we wanted to do it later
Tradition
on when we
carried
got
on,
older, yeah.
sure.
Another good thing about the West End was you didn't have to go outside for anything, really. The shopping areas, the Spring Street. Can you
Yeah.
tell some of the stores? And
Yeah.
how about the fish man used to come around? And
As a matter of fact, he came with me to the West End, Frankie Consolo. I think everybody who had a store in the West End had a unique personality, you know? What can I say about Frankie Consolo? I mean, he'd walk around with that push cart there, ding, da, ding, 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 and he was one of the funniest guys I've met in my life. And we grew up together. We did some wild things together. And we used to have a date Friday night. Well, Friday night is a big fish night. So he had to clean the store. So he'd say, "Well, if we want to go out, you got to help me with the fish heads and stuff like that." And there'd be half a dozen of us. Frankie's father made some good money, and they always had a nice car, and he had this big Oldsmobile, maroon Oldsmobile, I'll never forget it. And we'd cut across Charles Street Circle and go up on Longfellow Bridge and park in the middle of Longfellow Bridge, and he'd get out and make sure the coast is clear, and the doors would open up, and the trunk would open up, and two guys would stand on the sidewalk, one by the railing of the bridge, and we'd pass the
fish
metal
heads.
boxes of fish heads and stuff like that, and throw them over the side because you save the metal boxes because you'd probably use them again. And then we'd jump in the car and we'd go out on our dates, whatever it was and everything. And every morning and Saturday we looked for newspapers, see if anyone spotted the fish heads with piranhas in the Charles River or anything like that. And there was the schnippers. What can I say? No, you could name anyone. It isn't as if you're going to single out one
No, you
person
couldn't,
because,
right.
as I said when I wrote the book, that when I started it, I said, to write the true story of the West End, you'd need about a couple hundred books, because everyone was a story in themselves.
They were.
He had Normie Schnipper. What did he weigh, 500 pounds?
I did a little more
And
than
he'd
that.
sit
Never
on
moved.
the milk case with the steel rods going through it, and hang a great girth would just hang over like this. And you can, "What you guys want?" His little mouth, he had kind of a high-pitched voice. And he'd say,
Ready for this? You ready?
Okay, I was drafted. I'm Jim Campano, the editor of the
I was
newsletter.
wondering who he was.
I couldn't figure out who he was all this
I was
time.
drafted to do camera work today, and I just want to thank Raymond for the last 5 years, because if it wasn't for Raymond, he contributed to the newsletter about $30,000 worth of labor.
Keep
The
going.
Newsletter,
All right, keep going. You're
the
doing a
newsletter
good
would have
job.
never gotten out if it wasn't for Raymond.
Thank you.
And I really want to say that, and we really need him, and we're going to miss him a lot.
I hope so.
Where's he going?
tell us about your plans, Raymond.
We're going to kiss him on the cheek,
Jump on it, boys. Jump on it.
and that he'll never be seen again.
No, right. I'm moving to Florida. I'm just getting out of the Boston area.
We took up a collection.
Took up a collection. Yeah, they collected. They passed it around at the last 3 West End reunions, and I think I got 30 cents. No, but I'm moving to Florida. I'm having a home built down there. The home will be ready. As a matter of fact, November 15th. I hope to be down there by the end of November. And it took a lot of thinking. This was no overnight thought. I thought about it for the last 2 years.
Why don't you tell them the address, because I want everyone that sees this to go down and visit.
All right. I'll be in the heart of Miami. No, I'll be in Lake Worth, which is West Palm Beach area. If you're in Florida, look me up. I'm in the phone book, which I'm listed now anyway. And my name, as you know, is Raymond Scalabini.
Anyways, I just wanted to thank Raymond, and I wanted to do it on camera.
Well,
so
you know, the
everybody
one
would
thing
know.
I want to say, Jim, just after that, I firmly believe in the past 5 years, in my personal feelings, I've accomplished something that nobody else has ever attempted, or nobody else has ever done. I've taken people that have been away from each other for 30 years and brought them back through a newsletter
Right.
as a group where they're seeing each other, they get, you know, they're contacting each other. As you know, we get mail. Gee, can you give me
Right.
so-and-so's phone number, their
Right.
address and
Yes.
everything? And with the West End reunions and everything that's going on, I think it's been,
You started this, the CDC, the Community Development Group.
Yeah,
You
Jim,
started the
yeah.
Historical Committee. You started.
Isn't it true that Rappaport put up the money for the house to
he
get rid of you?
certainly did,
He bought
right.
the house,
Yeah,
yeah.
you
That's
bet.
how we got
he's
new
getting rid of me.
cars.
Yeah, no, but the thing is, we've accomplished, without knowing what would happen,
Right.
it was a shot in the dark as a joke, as we mentioned before. We started the West End Newsletter as a joke, and it's expanded, and it has started a lot of organizations, like Jim said. Plus, you know, a lot of the people are getting involved. You got the St. Joseph's Church who's helping
Right.
us out. And it's the councilman now, as a matter of fact, even the governor understands there are West End people. At one time, he made a statement, I believe, Jim, did he make the statement, no more West End people? Close it up.
Well, that's what they'd like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well-
and that's about it for the day. I guess our host will.
Thank you for being here. We had great guests. I hope everybody enjoyed the show, and see you at the next West End video newsletter.
Very good. Now, get outside. I'll make up for you.